Thanks, Alex. So welcome everybody. Good evening to you. So maintaining momentum after a successful event or campaign is crucial for building long-term engagement and sustained impact. So we'd like to know, what does maintaining momentum look like at your club? If you want to post some comments in the chat on that. So obviously we've got an amazing opportunity to capitalise on what is hopefully going to be a fantastic event. But what happens after the Rugby World Cup? That's the big question. So we want to start thinking about what maintaining momentum means to your clubs. We're talking about maximising impact, ensuring consistency, involving and developing more women and girls at your clubs, and generally just trying to maintain motivation and energy. So only by considering these things are we going to be best placed to create a lasting legacy for the female game in this country. So it's a really important thing to have a think about. What does maintaining momentum look like? So I'm going to just come to Mark pretty early on. I appreciate it's pretty early, but just to see if there's any examples of what you think that means to you, and what things you're saying in the chat.
Oh, Jenna, there's a couple of things starting to come through. So
Yeah.
really nice one from Matt, keeping the new girls coming and returning in the future. Maintaining social media presence, particularly with Instagram. Things around supporting work with the local school rugby managers and developing the offer further. And that's all we've got at the moment, Jenna, but please do keep putting that information in the chat and we may pop back to it later. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. And we will refer back to that later on in the webinar. It's certainly a running theme around maintaining momentum and what that means. So just having a look at the agenda this evening, and what we're going to cover. So we're going to have, this is the third Rugby World Cup webinar that we've run, and we're aware that some people have attended them all, but for some people this may be the first one that you've attended. So we're going to do a really quick recap. We're excited to tell you about Rugby Fest and how clubs can get involved in that. We have the first of one of our guest speakers talking about how to achieve a lasting legacy. We're talking a bit about culture and creating the right environment, as this is going to be integral to us, hopefully, welcoming new people into the game post Rugby World Cup. We have another guest speaker talking about the great work that they've been doing at their club, particularly around older girls and women. And finally, we have a what next section at the end. So some of the slides do pose questions, and it's a chance for you to reflect and think about how this relates to your own club. So it may be helpful to have a notebook or make some notes on your phone. It might be handy just to make a few notes, just so that you can reflect on some things later. So in the first Rugby World Cup webinar, we did a poll, and the people that attended that webinar told us that their priorities in terms of opportunities and focus around the Rugby World Cup are the recruitment and retention of players and the recruitment of volunteers. So we've really tried to focus on these areas throughout this webinar. And also just a reminder for those of you that perhaps haven't attended the previous webinars, all of them are uploaded onto the Club Support YouTube channel. And you'll also get it in the post-webinar send-out, along with all of the links for the 3 Rugby World Cup webinars that we've done. So just look out for that in the post-webinar send-out. We also spoke about how vast the opportunities are, and many of these relate to the recruitment and the retention of players and volunteers. So that list that you can see is not exclusive, and you may certainly identify other opportunities at your club, but that just gives you a taster of the sort of broad range of things that we can tap into over the Rugby World Cup period and beyond. And then we also shared with you our new activation guide. So I just wondered if any of you have used it yet, looked at it yet. If you have, feel free to comment in the chat if you've found it useful. But the activation guide offers practical advice and inspiration to help your club make the most of the tournament. So things from managing logistics to boosting community engagement to enhancing facilities. It's basically designed to help you create a memorable tournament experience. It helps celebrate the women's game and to inspire the next generation. So each guide can be used on its own, or you can follow the full journey from preparation to kickoff. However, if you use them, now is the time to basically get started and try and make this a World Cup to remember. So the topics that it covers: preparing your club, social media and marketing, volunteer recruitment, age grade participation, women's participation, energizing your coaching, hosting a Women's Rugby World Cup watch party, and then Love Rugby for the Girls, which is our national campaign. So it's a really, really excellent resource. And if you haven't already, I would really recommend having a look and using it as you see fit. We also, in the first webinar, we heard from Sheppy, RFC, about how they've done a fantastic job of recruiting age grade players. So tonight we will hear from a club who will speak about how they've engaged the whole club, but very much a focus on what they've done around older girls and women too. So we're going to cover off the sort of older age groups in the webinar this evening. And then in the second webinar, we spoke about the landscape for 6 to 12-year-old girls. So if you just move on, Liam, for me, please. In the second webinar, we spoke about the landscape for 6 to 12-year-old girls. We launched the Girls Activity Days, which we've already had a fantastic response for, which is still open for sign up if you haven't already. And we're really excited to provide you some information about Rugby Fest tonight, which is going to be announced in the community game update officially tomorrow. But you are going to find out about it first, which is great. I'm now going to hand over to Liam, who's going to share with you a video and take you through the next few slides. Thanks, Liam.
Thanks, Jenna. Good evening, everybody. As it says here on our Rugby Fest poster, this is the Ultimate Rugby Weekend. We do have a short video that I'm just going to play for you all with Jodie Arnsley, otherwise known as Gladiator Fury. And Jodie's going to explain a little bit about this to us and the myriad of opportunities that it presents.
Get ready, Rugby Fest, 3rd to 6th of October is your chance to celebrate Red Roses Summer of Rugby. We're inviting clubs to host events from family barbecues, pre-season friendlies, T1 festivals to kick off the season and bring together communities. Don't miss out, sign up your club to host an event today and help create an unforgettable weekend of rugby.
So Rugby Fest is a follow-up to the highly popular Girls Activity Days that Jenna's just mentioned, and the weekend is going to be all-encompassing from the Friday the 3rd to the Monday the 6th of October, and the reason for that is so that we can include as many people from the rugby club across that weekend. It's a real good opportunity, being sort of post-Rugby World Cup final, to utilise the momentum created, as Jenna said, and as Jodie said there's a wide range of opportunities to enable us to engage with that, from food and drink festivals, arts and crafts, any activity around rugby, any family activities. It presents as a real opportunity. And for registering for that, you can potentially win a visit from a Red Rose. If you're one of the first 200 clubs to register, it will allow you to claim either a women's and girls rugby event pack or a T1 rugby pack as well. And you're also able to enter the competition to supercharge the Rugby Fest event with a game-changing prize, and that includes a whole boatload of resources, as well as activities that come as part of that, and a VIP short break package as well, which can be used as either a raffle prize or a reward for people who get involved. So the chance to elevate and amplify that event at your club is a really, really good opportunity. And as Jenna says, it is coming out in the community game update tomorrow to register, and goes to the 10th of August. But after tonight, you will be able to use the sign-up link when we post in the chat later on to get a bit of a head start, which is a great opportunity for anyone who's on the webinar this evening. In terms of promoting the events that you've got going on at your particular club, I'm not sure how many people will be aware of Find Rugby, but it has been around a while, and maybe potentially in the past has had some limitations. It's being developed quite considerably to where it was a few years ago. So we're probably looking at findrugby.com 2.0. And that's through ongoing feedback from clubs across the country in terms of how they would like to utilise this. The opportunities that you have going on at your club will now be able to go on there. In the past, it has very much been limited to clubs who are running various age group teams. So that feedback that's been coming in from across the country has been asking for events and opportunities, T1 activity. So that's why this section of the website is being developed. At the moment, the three key areas where you can pop events on there are girls' activity days, Rugby Fest events, and also Rugby World Cup watch parties. Post Rugby World Cup, this is then going to be expanded to include Inner Warrior events, T1 rugby events, and much, much more. So it gives us a real opportunity to advertise our clubs for free. And this is certainly where we'll be signposting people to for activity that's happening near them. As you can see on the screenshot there, we've got the event at Chester, so it tells you the distance away, a little bit of a description, so you can pop in there what you may need, where the event's going to be held, and should you require any extra details, there's also contact emails and phone numbers. And the way that we get into that is there's a smart sheet to complete to advertise your events, which will then go to our moderators for findrugby.com, and that will be approved, and then we'll go live on the website and should show relatively quickly. So just moving on to the first of our two presenters this evening. This is Kirsty Goldie-Brammer, who works for the RFU now, but was with England Hockey previously in her former life. And we're going to have a look at how to achieve a lasting legacy. The video is around 11 minutes long, and it's a great insight from someone who has worked in a sport where there's been varied success and how they sort of prepared for that. So without further ado, I will move this on.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kirsty Goldie-Brammer, and my current role is with the RFU. So I am privileged enough to be the senior project manager working in the women's team. But for today's webinar, I'm going to talk about my past life, where I used to work for England Hockey as a national manager for clubs and facilities, and talk a little bit about what we've done over the last few years in terms of a lasting legacy in the community game. So I want to start off with hockey's journey. Now, I'm not going to go through in depth over the last 13 years that's happened, but I do think these three pieces are fundamental for us as stepping stones for how we manage to maintain an increase in participation. So two of those, Olympics and then a home World Cup. For hockey, the Olympics is the pinnacle of a performance sport. That is the moment where sport gets seen on an international scale, and that is really the gold medal where everyone wants to win. And just a bit of context around hockey, it's a fairly gender-neutral sport, so we have as many girls and boys playing the sport. State school hockey is a big thing that they've been working on for many, many years, and the decline of that. And most hockey clubs don't own their own facility, so they might have a co-ownership of a clubhouse, but often now with the evolution of the surfaces of the pitches, they tend to play somewhere else to where their clubhouse is. So that's where hockey is. When I last worked there, which was 5 years ago, there was about 850 clubs, just to put into scale of where we were. So let's start. I guess when it was announced of London 2012 and that opportunity for us to have a home Olympics, which was once in a generation opportunity for all sports, including hockey. We had a stadium that was on Olympic Park, and we knew this was an opportunity that wasn't going to come around again. We had a legacy program that started pre-tournament, which was called the 5-week frenzy, looking at how we utilise those 5 weeks before the games to make sure that everyone could see hockey and had the opportunity to participate in hockey. So we did things like a big dribble, a world record, dribbling the hockey ball around the country. We did things like hockey houses, where we got into pubs and did some pieces, and some worked better than others. And I definitely think that there was lots and lots of learnings from that space that we've taken into future years. But as it shows there, one key thing for us was the strategy that went behind it. Now, that's not rocket science when you look at that. We were saying, if you get international success on a level like an Olympics or a World Cup, there will be increased visibility. There will be more people that want to watch it, both on the TV or live. If you get more people watching and getting that fan base increased, you will end up with more people that want to play. You get more people that want to play, that increases the pool, that then helps to drive up the pathway to increasing the success at an international level. But that was something that started pre-London and has continued on for the next decade. Just a little one on there, that's Kate Richardson-Walsh. So during the Olympics, both men and women competed for Great Britain. The women got a bronze medal at London, and Kate, the captain, broke her jaw in the quarterfinals, I think it was, and then continued to play. And she can eat or drink, continued to play in the semi-final afterwards with a broken jaw. And there's quite a lot of gifts at the time linking into men's football and perhaps a difference in resilience around that, which got hockey on the scale for that reason. But after London, there was then this huge boost to find a hockey club, what we're going to do, and be able to retain that. And that retention was retained. So past the weeks of the tournament, those girls and boys did continue to come to the hockey clubs. So over the next 4 years, it was looking at that from our point of view and what we could do to maintain that and the infrastructure within the clubs. Next came Rio. Now, Rio was a different kettle of fish. It was obviously away from home. We had Zika virus, lots of different bits with the stadiums and how they were delivering compared to London. And our players, both men and women, weren't favourites, so we weren't expected to win. The women continued to win each round, and suddenly it got to that point where we got to the semi-finals and they won the semi-final. There was a realisation that we were going to win the Olympic medal in Rio, and that was a shift for us. In hockey, you don't get millions of people watching games, and there was 9 million people that watched the BBC that night. And for any of you that did watch that, the girls Great Britain beat the Netherlands, who were multiple Olympic champions, World Cup winners, holders at the time, world number one, and they won on penalty shuffles. And it was this phenomenal gold moment, as we called it, that everyone couldn't quite believe it. The press were talking about it, the 10 o'clock news was moved, and it was like, what do we do? And the equivalent of club developers at that time, within the next 72 hours, rang every single hockey club and said, what are we doing for this gold moment? And the clubs were brilliant, and they'd got ideas and they'd got suggestions. And what we'd put in place prior to that was this national club weekend called Hockey Fest that came about, and clubs were ready, and all the players had already signed up to go to multiple clubs over a period of time, which was phenomenal, because these girls had suddenly come from walking down the street and people not knowing who they were, to trying to get out their car and signing autographs and being shouted at across the street. And these hockey clubs became hubs where people who'd never been or knew there was a hockey club in the area suddenly turning up. And that was it was sort of that gold, huge exciting moment, but also a bit terrifying for people who are trying to be the volunteer recruitment manager and what you do to retain them and those sorts of things. But some of the examples that we had from there were brilliant, and what the clubs did, and making the pitches smaller, increasing the amount of sizes of squads, getting everyone just playing something, using different times of the day to do bits, getting parents on a course to be able to teach the basics and to be able to support loads of stuff like that, just to make sure we could keep this massive gold momentum for as long as possible. And then after that, 2 years after that, we had the 2018 World Cup at home. So we had a legacy venue post 2012 on Olympic Park, and we had this Women's World Cup. Now, what we wanted to make sure of that is, again, that we made sure it wasn't an England Hockey World Cup. It certainly wasn't that. It was the clubs. It was all of the clubs across the country that helped build that. So that's what we had, the Euro World Cup campaign. And that was an initiative to encourage clubs to go into their communities and to talk about the World Cup, and also make pledges about what they wanted from the World Cup, whether it was their shirts at the venue, doing some block bookings to get everyone there, those types of things to really make it. And then after it, what do you want hockey to look like post this event? And it was incredible. And some of the things that the clubs did, they still continue to do now. And that's been amazing. Now, from a performance point of view, we didn't win that World Cup and we were quite a long way off it. So it's been a really interesting journey for hockey when you see success and when you don't, and the impact that that has, because hugely important, but absolutely not imperative. Touch wood, everyone, that the Red Roses do what they could do in September. But if they don't, there is still this phenomenal opportunity for us to engage and help and support those young girls and women who want to come back and play the sport. So I think that's really important, and more than happy to share any more around your World Cup campaign. But just finally, and I guess 3 points for me, 3 slightly dodgy photographs, apologies for that. First one, flash in a pan. What will happen in not very long now is when the World Cup starts, we are going to see something special, and there is no denying that. And it's how we utilise that for the long term, how in 3 years' time we are in a position where we think, yes, we are still being able to manage that increase that we had. Hockey are still 40% up in their participation than they were from 2011. Now that's had dips, and don't get me wrong, that wasn't perfect, but that sustained participation is there because of the way that the clubs and the schools have reacted to it, and that's been so exciting. Rugby can undoubtedly do the same. Like I say, it's not a flash in the pan, and we need to learn from those bits. Second one, massive queue there, as we like to do. Waiting lists, that was the big thing for us, that whilst it's really exciting that people want to come and clubs and drinkers and say, we've got a waiting list of 50 people, it's amazing. We were like, it is wonderful that you've got those, but it's not amazing because girls aren't going to sit on a waiting list for 6 months. Parents, when they've got a plethora of menus of opportunities for their girls to play, aren't going to stick with a sport that they've never played before just because it was on the TV 2 weeks ago. It is, how is your club going to be able to cope with this additional demand and thinking outside the box and keeping them on there? So if a girl sees the Red Roses on the Sunday and wants to come to the club the next week, she can pick up a ball and she can have an opportunity. There is some link there with the club that will keep her coming back and coming back. So that was just probably the biggest point for us, and the biggest learning was around that waiting list point. And then finally, and most importantly, and it's a very happy person on that screen, is this is, without using it, this is your World Cup. You are the guys that have spent hours and hours and months and years lobbying women's rugby and supporting the girls' game and spending some wet mornings getting the girls playing. And this is yours. The players think that, everyone thinks that. So stand back, and over this period, over this next 2 months, enjoy it, because in August and September, something very, very special is going to happen to this sport and to women's sport and in this country. And you need to be able to stand back and think, yes, and smile and see it and enjoy it and embrace it, because it's going to be pretty cool. And I really look forward to seeing lots of you in the next weeks and months during this incredibly exciting time. And thank you for everything you're doing, and enjoy the rest of the webinar. Thank you.
So that's a real kind of thanks to Kirsty for doing that. I think it's imperative that we start to learn from other sports, and certainly for someone that's lived through that and sharing those learnings, it's really appreciated by us as a sport now. In terms of the key points from that, I think that, you know, the flagship events provide us with a really unique opportunity and showcase our sport in a very unique way. So we need to maximise that, and hopefully this series of webinars is exactly what we're trying to do there. Another message is, don't leave it too late. Kirsty didn't give the exact dates, but just as a reminder, it's 46 days until England versus the USA kicks off in Sunderland for the start of the Rugby World Cup, and 82 days to the final of Rugby World Cup 25. So it doesn't leave us an awful lot of time, relatively speaking, to really kind of plan what we want to do and deliver. So we need to be ready. Another good point was considering beyond the event, so not just the here and now, but looking at, actually, Kirsty referred to the sustained participation still following that sort of 2013 growth. Yes, it's been up and down, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but ultimately the trend has been that that's stayed reasonably high. So we need to bear that in mind and look at what we continue to do. And I know people were popping some things in the chat at the beginning of this conversation. I'll check in with Mark in a moment just to see if there's anything additional. We all want the Red Roses to win. It's really kind of something that we would all love to see. And as Kirsty said there, it's not imperative, but it is sort of really, really helpful. Regardless of that, though, there is going to be a huge wave of momentum created on the back of this and the excitement around the Rugby World Cup. So we need to make sure that we're prepared as clubs. One of the things Kirsty touched on there was about the volunteers, training up parents, getting people ready for the potential influx of players. And also, I think it's quite pertinent to consider what formats of the game we have available as well at our clubs. Not every young boy, girl, or sort of adult male, adult female wants to just step into the arena of contact rugby. They would probably enjoy playing a gentle introduction of non-contact rugby, and T1's obviously our new version of that. There is a T1 webinar again on Wednesday night this week from 7 till 8, and that's using some clubs from who are doing T1 rugby at the moment and delivering that particularly well. So really worth having a look at that one. But also implementing that back at your club, so that there's different opportunities. Some people may wish to continue playing non-contact rugby. Other people may just want to transition across and play some contact rugby, but it's having that option for them there in the first place. And the final thing there is just the enjoyment's imperative. They enjoy it as clubs, enjoy it as individuals, and use it as best you can. Mark, I'm just going to ask if there's anything pressing that we need to into before I move on.
No, just a couple of bits from earlier on. So just people, keeping their social media up to date more often, recognizing that some things are outdated, and really maintaining those relationships with local schools, and also Girl Guides has been quite a hot topic in the chat as well. So some clubs definitely starting to think about things going forward.
Good stuff. Excellent. Thank you, Mark. So just moving on from Kirsty's points there and looking at the sort of top 10 tips for recruiting volunteers. Appreciate these may come up quite a lot, and it's one of the areas that as club developers we've never had a club say we've got far too many volunteers here. Quite the opposite, in fact. I'm not going to go through them all, but just pick out a couple of ones that are really quite important to driving some of the other ones. So be really clear about what you expect. As we said, the Rugby World Cup gives us an excellent opportunity maybe to break some of this stuff up into smaller tasks for people who don't have as much time, but can really sort of help out and contribute towards the overall club effort. We need to have some real clarity about what the expectations are, though, from those roles. The benefits of being involved. So ultimately, they're going to be supporting their club, and in the longer term, they're going to be supporting the sustainability of their club. So it has a huge knock-on effect to, as Kirsty said before, the sort of following period and going beyond the Rugby World Cup. Training and support. So training support, really, we don't just want to kind of wind people up and let them disappear off into the distance. We want to try and give them the appropriate support. A lot of people drop out of volunteering because they feel they don't really know who to go to. They're not sure whether they're doing the job that's expected of them. So again, that's linked back to the initial point there. Recognizing and appreciating efforts, and that sounds so simple, yet probably one of the things that we maybe neglect to do the most. So it can be anything from a simple thank you to the plethora of reward mechanisms that constituent bodies or the RFU have in place to try and reward people for all the amazing efforts that they've invested into the game. And again, just speaking to your sort of CB or your local club developer, you can look at options around that as well, should it need to go above the normal. Being inclusive. So anyone within your club can add value. I was at a conference recently, and the lady speaking was from a cricket club talking about inclusivity and how she developed her club. And she was telling us about her new head of marketing and communications, who was a 14-year-old boy. And she was just talking about this is what he wants to do as a career. It's something that he is far more efficient than anybody else at the club at. And that trust and support that was invested in him is really starting to bear some real rewards for her cricket club. So it's about considering everyone within the club. For a potential influx of players, we definitely need to ensure that we've got the right environment. in place to welcome them in, and also the culture that's involved in our rugby clubs. The first impressions are really critical. So it's no good having the best changing facilities, the best pitches, the best coaching offer if we can't get people over the first hurdle. So we need to make sure that that club, that environment is right. So for these things, I just want you to kind of remove yourself from your rugby club shoes, your comfortable rugby club shoes at the moment, and push out your comfort zone a wee bit. And be honest in these slides. You don't have to feedback at this moment in time, but just consider some of these questions. If someone was to describe the overall culture of your club, would it be consistent with what you think, or would it be slightly different? We all know that the ecosystem within rugby now is very, very different, and we need to adapt to that current rugby landscape better. Would your description be matched by all? Does it suit members from a variety of backgrounds? Would people feel comfortable or be welcome to come into your club? What does inclusive mean to you as an individual, and what does it maybe mean to the club as a wider entity? And how do we, or can we change if required? And I think at this point, Dave's maybe going to put in a link to the culture resources, but it'll certainly be circulated post-webinar as well, just for some considerations about how we can influence this at our respective clubs. So just some top tips around the inclusive cultures. We do like to think that we're inclusive as rugby clubs, but are we actually inclusive? So just a couple of tips. We spoke to the diversity and inclusion department at the RFU and just asked for a couple of things that they felt were really important, going around their visits to clubs, to CBs and various other areas of the country. So one of the things that we kind of look at is what got us here won't get us there. That's one of the quotes. So things are moving on, and we need to make sure that we're embracing our local rugby communities the best we can. So ask, don't assume. Conversation is very, very key. And within that conversation, speaking to people, it will make things very clear for you, but it will also identify if any changes are needed to what you're doing currently. It might be some small tweaks to what you do or what you deliver, might give a totally different answer, engage much more people at your club. Speak up. So making sure that the club has the relevant policies in place around this. Lead by example as individuals as part of that club membership, and making sure that if there is any inappropriate behaviours or language, that people are brave and confident enough to tackle that early. The longer you leave it, that's sort of giving a little bit of acceptance to those things, and further down the line, they're much more difficult to deal with. So we need to make sure that we challenge some of that stuff earlier on. The representation within the club membership. So people like to look at that, think, is there someone like me within that membership? Can I be part of this club? And will I be welcomed with open arms into this club? So how can we encourage that as an organisation, as a local rugby club? And then educating yourself. So there's plenty of resources out there, both RFU-wise and by various other providers. And again, talking can be such a powerful tool to increase understanding in this scenario, whether that be for the individual that you're talking to, understanding what you're trying to provide as a club, or for you as an individual, understanding how you can adapt what you do and bring in larger footfall to your club and increasing your membership. So we're just going to launch a poll now. I think Alex is going to launch the poll for us.
So you've had a bit of chance, so that poll will be with you now. So based on what sort of Liam was saying, so how welcoming is your club to new players? Rate yourself out of 5. What do you think? Reflecting on some of those questions that Liam said. I can see some answers coming in now. Is it 1, very poor, or all the way to excellent? And it's good to see there's a few that are excellent, but there's a mixture across the board as well. So I'm going to give that a bit of a chance. For any reason, if for any reason you cannot see the poll, please just put what you would rate your club at into the chat. So please do get involved still. Last little moment, last little chance to complete that poll. And I will just stop that poll there. And here are the results, Liam. So the majority of them are actually very good, you know. There's obviously some improvement there. There's a small 7% that are excellent, but even the very goods, you know, probably can see some improvements that they can make. We've got 30% that are average and, a small amount that are poor. But I'm glad to say none of them have rated themselves as very poor. So it's kind of like, you know, but good to great. We're doing good overall, I would say, most clubs, but looking at that, but we can make it even better and make it great.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex, for that. Yeah, as Alex says, that it's how we do that. What are the next actions that we can implement and develop and get ourselves from an average to a good, or from a good to a very good, or from a very good to absolutely excellent. Okay, even better. So we're hitting the ceiling there. Sometimes you get some contrasting opinions throughout clubs. So I always remember going and doing a workshop a number of years ago, which had a real representation of the club membership and the local community. And one of the things that we were looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the club. One of the strengths was that the club said they were really open and welcoming to the local community. The local community had said that the club aren't very open and welcoming to the local community. So that was an interesting contrast. And although it was sort of almost bashing against each other, it was a learning opportunity for the club, because how they thought they were perceived in the local community wasn't quite right. But they were able to start a conversation and look at how they could improve that. And consequently, that's improved massively over the years. And a much greater engagement. So it's about identifying those little actions, and those who are sort of rated excellent on there, it might be that we can share some of the stuff that you're doing really, really well and why we maybe hit that excellent mark. And it's something that clubs can learn from each other. So thank you very much for that. Just onto the next slide. Again, you're out of your comfortable shoes within your club, and if you sort of fast forward to the Rugby World Cup beyond, and a new player arrives unannounced at your club, 30 minutes before a training session, and just if you can walk through this in your own mind, how do they find the changing rooms? So would they know? Are they easy to find? How do they find the pitch? Is there an exit out the other end of the rugby club that leads to the pitch, or are they going to walk through the club with their boots on? How do they find that? What's the welcome like when they get there? Who looks after them during their visit? Are they assigned a mentor? Is someone sort of taking a lead on that within the team or within the administration of the club? How do you communicate with the new player to keep them involved in the longer term? And then how do you get feedback on their experience? They may come back and they've maybe enjoyed themselves, so you can kind of take that as a little bit of feedback, but possibly they don't come back, and then if we don't have the method to communicate with them, we maybe never know why that was. So just if you walk through that in your own minds, are there any areas that you see as an issue at your particular club or in general? And similarly, are there any areas that you think you do particularly well that might be a model of good practice? I'll just give you a moment or so to consider that and see if anything comes out. If anything comes out, Mark, please just feedback.
Hi, Liam. So at the moment, we've just got one thing from that in the chat, but it's a really good one, in that a club engaged a couple of the older girls to act as big sisters and take new players under their wing, which is something you referred to earlier, mentor buddy system type of scenario. So supporting those new visitors to the club through that journey that they're going to take throughout the day, and hopefully retain them going forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark.
And there's more about development pathways, mentoring, making sure people know each other, so introductions. Yeah, actually having conversations with people allowing, club officers to also introduce themselves to be part of that welcome, so that it's not just, the women and girls section, if you like, it's a whole club approach.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you, Mark. So just contributing towards the positive experience that we're alluding to here, we're in terms of preparing your club, and again, this is something that we're linking back to webinar 1, because this is a really important theme that runs all the way through, making sure that the club is prepared. So social space wise, is it welcoming to all? Is it bright, well lit, comfortable? Are things well signed for the toilets, the bar, the kitchen, the changing rooms, the toilets? So every sort of female participant always has a horror story about the quality of the toilets, and that is a big thing. And there's opportunities to develop those areas within clubs nowadays. And bad sanitary facilities can be a real deal breaker. So we need to make sure it'd be a shame to lose people, again, at the first hurdle, if we don't have the right facilities in place. So audio visual stuff, if we're having watch parties, we need to make sure that the tech's working. It's no good everyone sort of crowding around. I don't think 14-inch TVs exist nowadays, but do we have multiple viewpoints for people? And do we have good sound systems, good speakers? And then pitches, what is our pitch quality like? Obviously, we don't always have the best weather across England, so we maybe need to make sure we've got a quality maintenance program and those pitches are in good condition, and ultimately that leads to a real good quality player experience. And the final point on there is around licensing. So there can be a few licensing things that we need to bear in mind. So around TV usage, what channels we're using, music. And what we don't want is any surprises just popping up out the blue for clubs being caught out. And there is a free licensing helpline to support people with that, so they can check things out if they have got the right licenses in place. So really important that we do that. And I think ultimately the sort of modern rugby clubs are very different to how they maybe used to be. But the perception is maybe still a little bit dated. So if you were to draw a rugby club from 1980, perhaps, and draw a rugby club from today, I think that they would look very different in terms of what was involved and what they actually looked like. And so it's important that we get new people down to those. And the best way to spread the sort of advertising of your club is by word of mouth, by people getting it out there and asking people if they've been, and getting people onto the site. So before moving on to our second presenter of this evening, are there any additional questions at this point before I move on? Are we good, Mark? Or is there anything that we need to address?
No, we're good to move on at this point, Liam. Okay,
no problem. Thank you. So I'd like to introduce Catherine Gibbard from Buckingham Rugby Club. Catherine's going to take us through the whole club approach that they take at Buckingham. And as Jenna alluded to early on, there's a particular focus on the older girls and transition in this one. So Catherine, it's over to you.
Thank you, Liam, and good evening, everybody. Apologies if there's some background noise, but I'm having a lovely day out at Wimbledon today, and there's still a few matches on, so hopefully you can hear me. So at Buckingham Rugby Club, we've got one of the largest women and girls section in the local area. We've got currently, Liam, if you could stop the slides. So this is 10 years ago. Oh, sorry. Back one. That was 10 years ago. We started with just 15 girls and about the same women. And it was in the day where the female players had to come off at half time and go and put the ovens on, ready for the jacket potatoes afterwards. And then today we've got over 150 members, which we're hoping to increase next season. So this photo was taken a couple of years ago, and there's over 100 girls and women there. But now we're up to 150. And as I said, hopefully we'll have another 30 or 40 next season too. So over the last couple of years, the under 12s have been our focus to try and recruit them. We've had a really good relationship with 3 of the local schools, and over the last 3 years, we've done an afternoon of rugby introductions to them based at one school, and they've all come to visit us there. From that, we've developed a really good base for our under-12 team, which has then led on to our under-14s and under-16s over the years. So that's been really successful. This year, however, we were very lucky to win a grant from the RFU and a local charity called the Bucks Girls Rugby Charity to try and increase the number of under-10s and under-12s by doing a bit more. So I've actually been going into 10 local schools this summer. I'm a bit rugbyed out, to be honest. So I've done 7 assemblies, I think. I've given out 6 T1 rugby packs. So there's lots of rugby that's going to be happening in September in their PE lessons. We did 250 girls at an introduction to rugby afternoon back in the end of June, which was 3 schools that all came together. We've been doing an after school club because one school didn't want a rugby afternoon. They just wanted some assistance with an after school club. And that all culminated in a big tournament last Wednesday evening, which I was slightly panicked about beforehand, hoping that people would come. But actually, it turned out that I had over 60 girls turn up in the under-12 and under-10 age groups who had a really good evening, all good fun, all silly games. And then we had a touch tournament at the end. So that was absolutely excellent. In this age group too, we've been doing quite a lot with girl guiding. I have another volunteer hat in girl guiding. So we've been doing rainbows, brownies and guides in our local area. So that's been really popular. And there's a collaboration with the RFU and girl guiding. So they've all been able to get a badge, which, as everyone knows, that age group love a badge. In the under 14s and under 16s, because the under 12s have been so good, they've naturally sort of progressed. However, we have had a collaboration with the Bucks Girls Rugby Charity over the last couple of years, and to encourage girls to play rugby at school, there weren't actually enough for a whole team in 3 of the local secondary schools around Buckingham. So we've actually collaborated and joined up with the Buckingham Schools Barbars team, and through some fundraising from Buckingham Rugby Club and the Bucks Girls Rugby Charity, we've managed to get a bespoke kit for them. So they're all in one kit rather than mixed schools kit, and it allows them to go to lots of tournaments as a team and encourages those girls to keep on playing outside of the club, which has been absolutely brilliant. Moving on to, thank you. I've done a photo of my daughter scoring an awesome try last summer. Moving on to under 18, that's been our biggest challenge, to be honest, over the last 2 or 3 years. I've managed and coached the under 18s for the last 3 years. And I didn't know anything about under 18s. I just thought it would happen exactly the same as under 12s to under 16s, but actually it's very different. And trying to change the culture, we talked about culture earlier on this evening, that's been the biggest challenge over the last 3 years, to accept that this age group is very different to under 16s and under 14s. There's many other pressures. There's lots of them that go to college, so they don't go to a local school. So coming to training on a Wednesday, for example, is quite difficult because they're not home in time. Quite a lot of them have got jobs, so they can't come out in the evenings. Quite a lot of them have got schoolwork, driving lessons. And at the weekends, we have to take into account that quite a few of them go to parties on Saturday night. So that's all been very challenging, but trying to increase the knowledge and the understanding of the women's coaches, that it's not through lack of interest that the girls don't turn up to training. It's actually other pressures on their lives, which are quite strenuous at that age group. That's been a big step change over the last couple of years. And I'm pleased to say that the season just finished. We actually had 9 of my academy team move up into the first and seconds team. And they've played successfully for the women this season. And having a good relationship with the coaches and the women's managers has really helped, and the captains has really helped the safeguarding process, because that was a bit that I was very nervous about previously. But we've actually been able to help that process and smooth it over for the girls, more importantly, and for their parents and for the players involved. Other things that we're doing this season coming, we've developed, like schools, we've developed a house system. So it started in pre-season a couple of weeks ago. All of the women have been separated into houses, and that's going to filter down into the girls section. So that will then lead on to a natural mentorship within those houses of positions and players, so they can get to know more of the women, and the women can get to know more of the girls, and again have a bit of an appreciation that these girls are the future of our women's team, rather than just see them as a different part of the club that they don't need to be aware of. But again, that's a massive step change that we've had. We've got our link up with Loughborough Lightning, which has worked really well, being a bit more developed this year. We've got 4 ladies that are going to pre-season training with Loughborough. We're doing a bit more with Saints this year as well. So we're hosting summer camps and winter camps. And then the other big change, I suppose, is that there has been a change on the exec committee. There's been no female representation on the exec committee for as long as I know. And now, not because I necessarily wanted to have the role, but I feel that it's really important that there's somebody female to be representative. So I am now the vice chair of the rugby club to try and ensure that we are represented at the highest level. This picture is just my favourite picture of this season. This is the under 14s, or under 13s as they were then, pre-COVID. And of that group, 6 of those players played for the women's team in the season just finished. So I think that shows how far we've come and how successful that we've managed to step change the whole of the women's section and the girls section over the last 3 or 4 years. Our aims for next year are hopefully to have another visit to Twickenham. This is a picture of our second team who went to Twickenham in early May. They won I think it was the Papa John's Junior Cup. I'd like to have 25 new recruits in the under 10 and under 12 section. We've got enough girls to have 2 teams at under 16s this year. We're having a 3rd team for our ladies called the Black Pens, so that will be the social side, just playing for fun. And as I said, hopefully one of those teams may get another trip to Twickenham, which would be absolutely amazing.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much for doing that and sharing what your club are doing. We've time and time again, it proves that we've got so much out of clubs sharing their information with other clubs. It just works better than when we present that. So really appreciate your time on that. And there's some outstanding work across the club. Obviously, many hours from yourself and other volunteers have been invested in that. But you can see what's happened this season, how them girls have transitioned through the club, that it's really made a difference, and hopefully that sort of makes you pretty happy to see what you've actually achieved at the club. So again, thank you very much for that. Before we let you go, I'll just check in with Mark to see if there are any questions around that before we move on.
So there was a question around how they built the relationship with Loughborough Lightning and other pro clubs. They've answered that in the chat, in that it came from relationship with the new women's lead there, Mickey Clark. I don't know whether you want to elaborate on that, Catherine, at all, or.
Yeah, as you said, Mikey Clark, who's our women's head coach, he got talking and sort of started to show Nathan at Loughborough Lightning what we do. Obviously, they're on our doorstep. We're probably the largest, well, one of the largest clubs to them. And just, yeah, over the last couple of years, the relationship's developed. So hopefully, long may it continue.
Great stuff. There's a couple more questions just starting to come in, and just asking, do you have staff, or is this volunteer based or hybrid?
We're all volunteers.
Fantastic. And there's certainly a lot of love coming through, and a lot of congratulations for everything you've achieved this season, and people really loving the house system. So thanks ever so much for this evening, Catherine. Enjoy the remainder of your evening with the tennis. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. Fantastic session from Catherine there, and hopefully plenty to pick out from that. As we said earlier on, these notes will be going round. So if there's anything in particular that you sort of would wish you'd asked the question on or whatever, then we can sort of speak to club developers and try and get the information that we need from that. But I'm conscious of time, so I will hand over to Jenna just to take us through the next steps. So Jenna, over to you.
Thanks, Liam. Thanks, Catherine, again. It's fantastic to hear all the good work that they've been doing, and hopefully everyone can take something from what she's just presented there. So I'm just going to take us through the last couple of slides. So what next? And really, this is the most important part. We are about to enter a really exciting period of time, and hopefully that theme has been running through this webinar this evening. But the important part now is what we do next. So just a reminder about the sign-up windows and the opportunities to get involved pre, during and post Rugby World Cup. So we talked about the girls' activity days and that we can still sign up for that. We launched Rugby Fest this evening, so you'll be the first to be able to sign up for that if you wish to. And then I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that Rugby World Cup tickets are still available as well. So you can buy them via the website. You can buy up to 20 tickets at once and you can select stand or seating. But if you want to buy a larger group booking, then you need to contact customer services and they will sort that out for you. We're really conscious that clubs often want to go en masse. So you can get the help that you need to do that. So I think Dave is going to post a couple of links in the chat over the next few slides, and one of them will be around the Rugby World Cup tickets as well. So just to reiterate, there's a lot of support and resources out there for you to tap into. All of this will be coming out in the post-webinar send out, so you can just click on all these links and it'll take you straight to the information that you need. A lot of them we've referred to this evening: the activation guide, obviously the just generally the website, community rugby help, some activity guidance. We're in now, we're conscious clubs might be starting to think about going back for pre-season, so just some stuff around that. The girls activity day guide that we've spoken about, Rugby Fest we've spoken about. There's a really good playbook for minis girls, so particularly looking at under 9s and 10s girls activity, which I know some clubs are already doing. It's been proven that really helps retention rates of minis girls, and obviously that makes it easier then as you come up through and into under 12s and so on. So there's a really useful resource around that. Social media and marketing is in there. Find Rugby that Liam spoke about earlier on, and Rugby World Cup and education resources. So some really useful things that you can share with schools, but it's also quite useful information for clubs as well. And then we just thought this was a really nice quote, really. And legacy is not what I did for myself, it's what I did for others. And hopefully we want to, I guess, leave you with that thought. We have got an amazing opportunity ahead of us. Hopefully this webinar has inspired you a little to go back to your clubs, plan how we're going to make the most of it. Please keep in mind the challenge we set right at the start about maintaining momentum and what that might look like at your clubs. And really that's all that remains to say is to thank you very much for your time this evening. A big thank you to Kirsty and Catherine for their contributions, and we just hope that everyone enjoys what lies ahead. Our contact details will be in the post-webinar send out, and if you wish to follow anything up with your local club developer, then we'll be more than happy to help you. We are going to stop sharing in a minute, but we will stay on for a few minutes if you have any questions that you'd like to ask. But for now, thank you very much.